Well, good afternoon and welcome to our long webinar. I'm really glad that you can join us today. My name is Sarah-Lou. I'm a senior advisor on the Oxford MBA at Saïd Business School. And today we're going to first hear from hopefully Siddha, who will be talking to us about the Oxford Indian Forum. And we will then hear from the rest of the panel answering a few questions on how they kind of prepared for the MBA. Closer to the end of the webinar, we will allow time for questions, so feel free to start typing in your questions. However, please do make them somewhat general so that everyone can benefit from them. Please also use the Q&A icon so that we don't miss anything. So we're going to go straight over to Siddharth, who will be talking about the Indian Forum that we do here at Saïd Business School. Over to you. Oh, I'm not sure where he's gone to. We'll just see if he is still here. There you go.
Hey, sorry.
No problem. How are you?
Yeah. Good, very well. Thank you so much for organizing this, Sarah. I'll go very quickly. So I just graduated. I was actually batch of 23, and currently I'm on the founding team of a private equity fund in India, which is focused on climate transition. And I think I've been given the duty to talk about the Oxford India Forum. So essentially, we founded the Oxford India Forum 2023, which is essentially a platform to drive collaboration between tech innovation and research that comes out of Oxford University and businesses run by Indians globally. So there are two legs to it. One is to drive collaborations, because if you actually come into Oxford, you realize there's obviously the business school, but there's a lot of other things that actually happen in Oxford. There's great research that's happening on healthcare, on robotics, on Gen AI, on cloud computing, et cetera, et cetera. And I encourage you all to explore that when you're at Oxford. And the idea is that the US has been phenomenal at commercializing research and bringing and driving collaborations between academia and business, but the UK hasn't. So I think there was a white space, and Oxford is one of the foremost universities in the world where research is very flourishing. And I think that's something we set up. And the second part is to have a conference every year. So essentially, we aim to have the largest India-focused conference at a university in Europe. And I think we had our first conference in June this year, where we had the likes of Ananya Birla, Rohan Murthy, Jayant Sinha, Mohandas Pai, Aditya Ghosh, etc., etc. So we fly down 10 people who highlight the India growth story every year at Oxford. And I think if anyone does join, I do encourage you to be part of the forum and platform, because I think it's a great way to meet people, to network, and also know what the opportunity set in India is. So I think that's very quickly from my side. Happy to take any questions from you at any point.
That's great. Thank you ever so much for sharing that. We really do appreciate it. So over to our panel. So just a few questions that we want to start with, and then we'll take questions from the audience. First of all, just introduce yourself, when you joined the Oxford MBA, what you were doing pre-MBA, and what you've been doing since that time. Anyone could go first.
I can start. Hi, everyone. So I did my MBA 22 to 23. So I graduated last year, had a fantastic time, and was very grateful for the opportunity. So before the MBA, I was an entrepreneur for 4 years. I founded a food and beverage e-commerce marketplace in Delhi, and ran private label food brands, basically a kombucha brand, a frozen foods brand. Sold that business, did my MBA. Then during the summer of the MBA, I came up with this idea in carbon finance, was incubated by Oxford's first climate tech incubator. Did that for almost a year before realizing I wanted to change gears. Right now I'm freelancing and looking at some agri-tech opportunities. Sarah, did I cover everything?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Anyone could go after. Please jump in.
I can go next. So I started my career with KPMG's risk consulting practice. I worked there for about 3 years and then went on to work with Satwa Consulting and as an internal strategy consultant. And then I joined the Oxford MBA in 2021, graduated in 2022, and straight after the MBA joined Amazon. I'm still working with Amazon and currently in the role of senior program manager in sustainability.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Anirudh. I'm an engagement manager with Deloitte India Consulting business right now. Work in the social sector, work in strategy advisory, program design, program management for social enterprises, as well as for corporates and nonprofits, which are looking for support from Deloitte in a consulting fashion, from program design to strategic planning, growth planning, fundraising, and so on and so forth. I did my MBA in 2018 and up till 19. Arjun and I were the same batch. Before my MBA, I was working in the social sector as well, more of a nonprofit worker. I was doing program design and did work with central government as well as the nonprofits on program management as well as the design and execution of the programs. I also was a Teach for India fellow, so I taught in class grade 6 and 7 students for 2 years in Delhi. Since the MBA, I've moved into for-profit education startup industry. So I worked for a Series B startup right after the MBA in the core strategy team, worked with the CEO and the rest of the senior management on the growth strategy planning, program management of the entire organization as a CEO's office, competitive analysis, product market analysis, identifying new product opportunities, building out those products into the 0 to 1 journeys, etc. Led the company to grow into a $1 billion unicorn in 3 years, and then now moved to Deloitte as a engagement manager.
Good, lucky last. My name is Arjun. As Anirudh said, I did the program 18 to 19. So we actually recently had our 5-year reunion the previous weekend, which unfortunately neither of us could go to, but definitely not reminiscent of the year. I think it was a phenomenal year, lots of learning, lots of fun. In terms of my background, I sort of worked in a couple of roles in energy. So my first role was as a on the graduate program at a big French multinational energy outfit in their tech team. I sort of wound that up to join a social impact enterprise in a last mile renewables distribution and built their tech and ops footprint. Sort of grew quite rapidly over a 3.5-year span, and then came over to the business school to do the MBA program. Since I've graduated for the last 5 years, I've been with EY Parthenon. So I've been in their M&A advisory practice. So I advise on transactions, and I'm a senior manager of the team over the last 1.5 years or so. So yeah, good to be here.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Maybe back to you, Shruti. Maybe you can start by telling us what attracted you to Oxford.
Okay. It was a bunch of things, but essentially my priorities were very different. I was exiting a startup that had sort of left me in a very saturated state mentally. So I was happy to sort of move on from that journey and into something that would just give me like a year's worth of, I don't know, something completely different. So I chose a university such as Oxford because I mean, I went to DU, sure, and I went to this college called College of Business Studies, but it didn't give me like a university kind of experience. So I knew I'm just going to do this like once in my lifetime. So I wanted to do something which was, I don't know, like something out of a dream. So I'm just telling you how it is, right? So I chose Oxford for that reason. I'd applied to other schools in the US, in the UK as well. But I had two main considerations. Number one, I wanted a very different, very nice, very dreamy experience that was something personal to me. But also second, I needed a scholarship. So it was essentially these two things. Saeed was somehow probably written in my destiny, because I ended up deferring my application twice and then applying all over again in my third go. So I knew I was hell-bent on that school. And in that timeline, I'd reached out to a lot of professors, new people from two different batches. Like I knew Vishnu Priya, all that time. I kept deferring, but I knew her from attending Zoom calls and stuff. So I realized that I like the class size. It's not too big, it's not too small. I like the location, I like the university, I like the sort of programs and the focus of the business school. I like that it was a generalist program, so it would open doors for me without sort of cornering me into becoming a specialist. I also liked that Oxford versus other UK schools was very well placed with scholarships. It was pretty good with funding. So I used that time to figure out where exactly I can fit in, and it worked to my advantage. I think that's it. Yeah.
That's great. Anyone can go next.
I guess I'll go next. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Anirudh.
Okay, great,
Okay.
great.
Yeah. So for me, it was quite a systematic approach. I followed the process of elimination. 3 years into KPMG, I sort of realized that I am ready for the MBA because I had a very rich experience in KPMG itself, working on very varied clients with varied teams, etc. And when I started really preparing for the MBA, for me, the first factor was which part of the world I see myself in. Very systematic in my approach. I canceled out US and Canada because I just did not see myself there. So I had the rest of the world left to me, and then and then of course within the European continent, and then you had business schools in Asia. Within Europe also, I wanted to make sure that this is my personal preference. I did not want a language barrier. So for that, then I was able to select UK, and then the UK schools were in my round one, and then I was also considering other Asian schools in round two, but thankfully never got to that because got an offer from Oxford in round one itself. Another plus point of Oxford was that it was a one-year program, which meant that I did not have to stay away from work for too long. And of course, like Oxford is magical. Just walking into the university, you wouldn't believe you hear with a place which has so much history. I don't know, like 800, 900 years old. So I think a culmination of these factors led me to choose Oxford. Go ahead, Anirudh.
Thanks, Vishnupriya. So I'll actually just start off by talking about why I wanted to go to an MBA in the first place, and then tell you why Oxford was the choice for me. So I'd spent like 4 years, more than that, in the social sector. For me, I'd worked with a lot of nonprofits and even in government. What I realized was the scale of quality impact is something that the sector just struggles with drastically. And luckily, through my part of my consulting before my MBA, I did get to work with a few startups who were doing like really cool stuff in the education space specifically. And they were able to get scales, have a sustainable model, which was affordable as well as did very well. So my idea was, I did not know anything much about business, but I wanted to understand how can one scale social good in a sustainable manner. I thought my MBA would sort of allow me to sort of get the skill set. And I also wanted to gain experience in strategy, entrepreneurship, sort of just looking at these three broad areas. The Oxford MBA just clicked as the highest, sort of like the best university for me that I wanted to get into, just from the focus of entrepreneurship and strategy in the university. I don't have a benchmark to compare it from other universities, but as from at least how much the coursework sort of revolved around that, with entrepreneurship project, courses on new business, entrepreneurship, finance, etc., was like very clear that there's a clear focus. Social sector was, like Oxford is one of the places where there's a lot of emphasis and wantingness to grow leadership in the alumni in that sector as well. So just made a lot more sense. I connected with Professor Mark Vintreska before. He was very nice enough to sort of give me time and take me through some of his things that he's discussing, that he was actually teaching in the class. So I had some experience before. So yeah, that's the reason. And I mean, if I have to tell you, like really, like the instant when I have decided that Oxford was the place, I had a admission from another university as well in the US, which is giving me good scholarship too. And I had student like selectee WhatsApp groups made for both universities. And when I looked at the profile and the diversity of students in the class in Oxford, it was just mind-boggling. Like countries I don't even know the names of from all around the world were there in the class, while the other universities uh, admission group did not have the diversity. Like it was much more paler than what the colors the group of Oxford sort of brought into, like what I could see over there. And just the legacy of the university, the idea of living in of spending the time and learning from the one of the best known universities in the world, and plus with the knowing that I'll be surrounded by people who are coming from all around the world, which are with very strong backgrounds, but made me sort of decide that this is the place where I'll do my MBA.
Right. Lucky lost again. I think I was so I was actually in the social impact space. I think one of the things that appealed to me about the program was the emphasis on impact. I think we were one of the first classes as well where they offered the impact lab, which is sort of an extracurricular. So I was very much sort of utopian in my thinking back then. I really wanted to, sort of explore something entrepreneurially in the last mile, distribution space on renewables. There was a lot of space to operate. Interestingly, sort of like, as you can tell, happened to pivot over the course of the MBA. I think it was primarily because I was I fell in love with transactions. Really sort of enjoyed the dynamic around them. I'm advising on them like full time now. So yeah, I mean, it's a good example of how your thought process can pretty much sort of change over the course of the program, based on your exposure to things you haven't been exposed to, either during your undergraduate studies or like, during the work experience that you get prior. I'd say the other thing I think that appealed to me, a couple of other things, of course, I think structurally it was good because it's one of the few year-long MBA programs in the world. That appealed to me a little bit, I think, largely because the opportunity cost was a lot lower, and I felt like the duration was just about right for me to sort of take off and learn and reflect and sort of understand where I wanted to go next. And I think the other aspect as well is you're sort of in a business school, but I think compared to sort of some of the other business schools that are quite standalone, you're embedded within the broader university. And so naturally, I think we'll sort of talk about this next, but you will end up getting exposed to so many different people that are doing so many different programs. And I think, as was sort of alluded to earlier, the appeal around like, being exposed to great thinkers that are trying to solve problems of various different degrees across the uni, not just in the business school, is something that can't be sort of parallelly applied in most other business schools, right? So I think all of these reasons were or sort of played a role in my decision as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing. I'm actually going to go into some of the audience questions, and then we'll talk about highlights maybe closer to the end. Got a question here in just regarding alums connections. Before you came onto the MBA, how did you connect with any alums? Did you reach out to people in regards to get more information? Did any of you do that? And how did you find the process, I guess?
I mean, I could take that up. I probably did that for 3 years. So because I deferred twice, so I knew people who were joining and I knew people who were sort of like graduating. soon for 2 years, and then the third year. And so I'd say people are very approachable. It's very accessible. Just reach out to them on LinkedIn, and they're very happy to help, which is easy when you're writing Oxford's application, which I think is like 2 applications in one. Yeah, just reach out to people on LinkedIn, and also probably observe the kind of circles or communities that have sort of formed in the Oxford ecosystem in terms of entrepreneurs, family business, impact, development, etc., etc. I think that really helps.
I think the other thing to add as well is that you get found out pretty early if you're doing this for the wrong reasons, right? And the reason for that is like you really need to sort of think long and hard. At least I think the process has changed now, but I think back when we were applying, there were essays that you needed to write, of course, sort of explaining your motivation to join, and it really required the questions on it. I felt like really subliminally required you to like look into yourself, understand what drives you, understand what your motivations are, like career-wise, and how the program would sort of enable those things on a and take you to the next level. So it did require a lot of like reflection and thought, at least I think in hindsight. But I do know the process has changed since. Anirudh, I don't know if you have any other thoughts from, you probably went through the same process as I did as well.
Yeah, no, but like I definitely have a very fond memory from what you mentioned, which is like the alumni connection sort of force you, the people you connect to, they sort of force you to think deeply on. I mean, I don't know if that was something that you were alluding to, but for one of the first alumni that I spoke to in regarding to my application, sort of pushed me to think so much and made me sort of like be more self-aware as to why am I really applying, and have I made a conscious choice or not. So yeah, I mean, just sort of re-echoing from the larger message that yes, alumni connections are very, they're, I mean, everyone would be very happy to sort of spend time with you. But it also depends a lot on you as a person to sort of know how to approach and ask the right questions to get the right value from an alumni, because everyone has limited time. So it's a lot of times, like even if I get messages from people, I am not able to reply to 100% of them all the time. But just knowing that at times people are busy, and just sending a casual, gentle reminder, maybe a month or 2 to 3 weeks after, when a person may have the bandwidth, would be, I'm sure you'll get like a reply or from most of the alumni, right? So I think just approaching the conversation with humility and sort of trying to understand the experience from the other person, not to get an answer like, would I get a job after? Like those questions are not really helpful. Everyone has different backgrounds, different experiences. So just trying to understand the experiences, sort of useful conversation. So just my 2 cents would be to definitely reach out. On LinkedIn is a great way. I actually attended a in-person event that happened in Delhi, and I ended up having drinks with the large batch of folks after, and that was just one of the best. I mean, those connections I'm still in connect with it. Those guys are, that's one of the best ways to do it. But yeah, LinkedIn always helps, and just be careful and just be nice in the way you approach, and make sure that you ask relevant questions, and not get like very tactical answers.
Yeah, and I would just add on to what Anirudh said. Rightly, on LinkedIn, do not send a blanket friend request. Now that we have Oxford MBA on our profiles, somehow we're very hot shots and we get so many blanket approvals, blanket friend requests. So I would just say connection requests. I would just say whenever you're sending a connection request, please drop in a message on what you are expecting out of this. And be very clear. It doesn't have to be a big paragraph, just 2-3 lines. Hey, I'm working in this industry. I want to pivot to this industry, and I think Oxford MBA would be able to help. Can we please connect? That is enough. And once let's just say, spoken to someone, I find it really helpful to ask them to connect myself with somebody else that they know would be helpful to me. That's what I've done for other people. If I know that there's somebody else who would be able to help better because they have more relevant profile, then I've actually connected them. And honestly speaking, you have to take this with a grain of salt, but on LinkedIn, a lot of people stop becoming active after the MBA is over. People only come back on LinkedIn when they're looking for different jobs, etc. To just try to understand the mentality. So you might have to send connection requests to 50 people, and only then 10 would respond. So you have to be mentally prepared for that.
That's great. Thank you very much. And yeah, the process, the application process, I know we just touched on it, has changed. We don't have as many essays. We have Kira. I don't know if any of you did Kira, but it's in front of a video where you have a few questions and you take a video now, and it's exactly what everyone's saying. It's about you as a person, your authentic self. And so that's what we're trying to bring out. We do have another question in regards to post-MBA consulting and what careers, maybe the development career centre look like. Maybe if you wasn't in consulting, maybe you can talk about your connection with careers and how you found that here at Said.
I mean, I can just tell you very quickly that I knew that I came from entrepreneurship and most likely would want to go in the same field or like something to do with startups. So like right now I am interviewing for a COO role in an agri-tech company. So I just randomly reached out to the careers team saying this is going to be my third interview. Can you help? And they very proactively are now arranging experts to sort of, prep me a bit. So I think careers team is steadily improving. And I think they recently hired a lot more consultants and experts in the team to sort of amp up what they're offering to you. And yeah, so far, most of the people in my batch who wanted jobs, and you could just go to Said's website, check out the employment report of the past few years, go speak to people who got jobs in fields that you want to get jobs in. I think it's going to be very helpful. So I can say that more or less most of the people who wanted jobs in my batch got jobs. That's not a number, but you could get that number from a report.
That's great. Thank you very much. We've got another question here in regards to the appeal of the 1 year format of the MBA. How did you kind of plan, select your internship? I guess as well, you can talk about, obviously the 1 year is quite intense, how you planned your time around that. That would be great as well.
Yeah, I'd say I think the first thing that you need to sort of devise is like FOMO is going to be a real thing. Like you're definitely going to miss out on a lot of things given the sort of duration of the program, the number of things that you can get involved in. So what I would say is my general advice would be like just sort of decide the focus area that you really want on the program. For me, for example, I had, through the 2 roles that I had in industry prior to the program, had very limited financial exposure. And so naturally, the electives I ended up choosing, I think Anirudh mentioned entrepreneurial finance, sort of gave you a great view of the way venture capital funds work. Similarly, some corporate valuation, where you really understood like the 3-statement analysis and did deep dives on them. So it was very clear to me that was a part of the skill set that I wanted to develop, and so naturally constructed like the electives, choice of electives around that. But I think equally, I'd also say I'd say as much as that should be like your driving factor, there is an element where you should like open yourself out to doing new things. So the negotiations class, for example, is like great. It's very, very heavily subscribed and really popular. And even though it may not fall within the sort of sector or domain expertise that you're trying to build, right? It's like a great skill to have moving forward, and the class is equally fun. So I'd say make some accommodations for that as well. But overall, just make sure that you know the skills that you really want to gain. And I think that gives you the opportunity to curate your program since it's shorter than the 2-year.
That's great. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can add a little bit to what Arjun said. On the consulting part first, I think that was a previous question, but I'd say that a lot of consulting firms come to hire from site, but they come very early on in the process. So you join the class in September, October, you'll start getting interviews from the top consulting firms. The big ones come first because they want to hire first. So that starts happening right at the get-go. You've had your first course started and you're already interviewing for the bigger 1-year program. That's the thing that it comes with, right? They want to hire early in advance. So yeah, if you want to go for it, there's a tremendous opportunity. Just the thing you need to be careful about is that you have to know the consulting process, interview process, the hiring process well in advance. So come prepared with your case preparations, with your story, with your skill set definition being very clear, even before you come to the program. Me and my classmates, we used to actually meet up on a weekend once, like every 2-3 weeks or so, and just do some consulting prep even before, just knowing the fact that we'll have to sit through these interviews right when we actually go into the class. So it's because of the 1-year program, you will get those interviews early on, but it's up to you if you can do your prep, be ready for those interviews, and you'll be competing for the positions with the 2-year business schools across the Europe, right? Like same people will be applying for the same jobs in London. So just be very mindful that you'll have to come prepped for the consulting interviews. The career services would be there to support you. There will be a lot of sessions right in the first pre-start as well, just on getting you set up. But again, they'll have 3 weeks to do it, and you'll need probably 2 to 3 months to prep well. On the internship part, I think Arjun covered it well. I think there are a lot of people who come to as guest lecturers to the classes to talk about the kind of work that they do. The best ways to sort of connect and say, hey, can I get an internship for 2 months with work with you around the time when I'll be graduating my 4th term. Build connections, and I mean, your regular alumni network is already there that you know. One thing I would definitely want to highlight is the kind of guest lecturers that come. These are the people who work in industry in London, who've just taken time off to come to the class and give you talk about something that they work on. They're usually very open to sort of students coming and talking to them. So yeah, that's one good way of doing it as well.
But I think that we should say, of course, sort of emphasize that, there is, at least I think on reflection, you are certainly the master of your own fate in the year, right? Which is like there are enough and more resources that are sort of provided. I think there are like 1-to-1 sessions where they do CV screenings with, industry practitioners. I had someone from JP Morgan who had been at the firm for like 30 years come in and like look at my CV and tell me whether it was fit for banking, for example. So I'd say, but at the same time, like it does open doors, because I think given you're on the MBA program, reaching out, cold calling people who are sort of in the same line of work, and just saying, look, just want to have a chat about opportunities, it takes you a long way. But at the same time, it means that you still need to, sort of make that effort. And that naturally, as I think as Anil pointed out, the landscape is fairly competitive. It's a lot more competitive, I felt, than anything I'd ever done before. And so you need to definitely be on the front foot from the get-go, because, it's a shorter program and the likes. But that being said, I think it's good to sort of push yourself outside your comfort zone, just sort of like keep everything else aside for the 1 year and just say, I'm going to try and get this right, which means like trying to speak to as many people to sort out the opportunities you're looking for.
I can also share my personal experience because I did an internship. So the way the MBA program is designed, in the summer term, you do have an option to do an internship, or at my time, there was, I think, a consulting project that you could do, or choose electives. So, at that particular time, if you do internship, you do not really have to do any coursework. So at least that is off your mind. Of course, a lot of internship opportunities arise because of networking, but I was lucky enough to get the internship opportunity through site's internal platform, where the career teams keep on posting internship opportunities. So that is also one way that you can find an internship opportunity. Of course, it's not like you have to only network. There would, of course, be certain opportunities opening up in the internal platform, but you have to be mindful they would be really, really competitive because the entire cohort is applying for them. And the internship that I did was with actually a company that sprung out of the Oxford MBA program. So it was quite a fun internship. And the way I decided the internship that I wanted to do was I was very open-minded. I'd never done product management before, and I knew that I at least want to try this before I really decide what I want to do post the MBA. So that's how I ended up interning with this company. I know there were certain people who were really confused with their career journey, and they ended up also, working part-time during the MBA program. But again, you cannot do everything. That would mean that you would have to let go of a lot of extracurricular activities. You might not be able to focus so much on your studies, etc. But there were certain people who actually did that because they could not decide what to do. So they worked part-time, and then in the last term, they did an internship. Yeah, that's it.
Lovely, thank you. Anirudh, since you're the only one that is currently in Delhi, I have a question here for you. I would like to understand why and how was the experience moving back to India with an MBA from Oxford and looking out for opportunities?
Right. So why largely because I made up a mind during. I mean, I went with many different ideas of why I wanted to go to the MBA, but made up my mind to go and work for startups, and I thought that would be super exciting. And I was very clear I wanted to work in a strategy team of a startup with the founder, build up the company with the longer goal of me starting my own company. I've been sort of dissuaded with that idea, having worked in a startup at the CEO level, CEO office level. It's crazy job. But yeah, that opportunity that I was looking for, the kind of thing that interested me in terms of a startup, I found the atmosphere to be more vibrant in India. The kind of startups which are coming up, the amount of capital they were raising, and the kind of thought that was going through. I may have just not known the London ecosystem very well, but for me, I just saw that, and then, I mean, I actually had the job when I moved back to India. So I mean, I was interviewed in while I was at Oxford, and then moved. How does it go? Like how your experiences? I'd say that, I mean, your degrees, you're well respected as compared to any similar to any IIM in India. So you're given the same level of sort of heft is attributed to Oxford MBA. So in the end, you're competing with if you're competing for a pool of applicants, you're competing with the top tier 1 MBA graduates in India. Yeah, other than that, same thing, right? The job will require you to do what you have to do, and whether you're from IIM or you're from Oxford, you have to do the same job. So that's pretty much it. The skill set they'll expect for is the same thing. The interview question will be the same. Like, you get an entry into the door, but you need to be very well placed in and have the right skill sets to get the job. That's pretty much it. And if there's anything else you wanted to know.
Lovely. Okay, next question. I really like this question. Can you please talk about the culture in Said and what are the common attributes that you would see in students at Said?
I can start with this one. And I think we are all from different cohorts, so everyone would agree. Like, you would imagine you'd come to University of Oxford and everyone would be super competitive. But that is not the case. Everyone is super helpful. Of course, I could talk about things like diversity, etc., but these are all in numbers, right? You could see that on the reports. But I'm talking about just the nature of helping each other. I can give you an example from my personal experience. I was preparing for the Amazon interview, and so were, I don't know, 20, 30 more people. And even though we were preparing for the same role, all of us was so helpful, practicing interviews with each other, and literally an open book, sharing tips, etc. And that's not just the interview process. I've seen that during the coursework, during group activities, and for literally, like, everyone's always there to help. Like, just one message on the group and there'll be 10 people saying that, yeah, I can help you with that. Even lifting furniture from one place to another. there's somebody in the cohort to help you. So I just found that really nice in the MBA cohort, which might not be true for a lot of other MBAs. And of course, I have not been there, so I cannot share my personal experience. But what I know is that, you graded against each other. You're always competing against each other. And you're probably not as open, which is not the case in Oxford MBA. Yeah, so the culture is really collaborative, is the word.
I'll echo exactly what Vishnupriya said, and I can actually even cite examples of like where you can compare. So we have the MBA tournament where students from every big university in the Europe sort of come together for a tournament or competition. You could see the culture in other colleges, like Oxford, just super nice for some reason. Like everyone just like super happy to be with each other, and you learn through your classmates. Right? You learn a lot. I mean, I can't put a percentage on it, but like a lot of your learning comes from your classmates, and that would come through if they're happy to have a conversation with you. They're not competing with you all the time. They're working together on certain projects together. So that was the I'd actually say niceness, like niceness for the common string. Everyone was just nice, which is surprising for a business school where you pretty much get alpha level people to come and compete with each other on grades or jobs and whatever. But super nice group, and everyone's willing to share, willing to be part of the discussion, willing to sort of tell you what they think, what their experiences have been, and get your point of view, which is brilliant.
I mean, adding on to what Anirudh said, I mean, as an applicant, sometimes you're not thinking, is everyone going to be nice to me or just in your batch? But now that I've graduated from the MBA and so have some other friends from other schools, what you don't want to do is be in a class that's cliquey. Like you come from India, you come from the US, and you still hang around the same people. It's not really going to add a lot of value to your life. So it's if you're paying for this program or paying for it with your time, you might as well make the most out of it. So this is something that during my research for B schools, I realized that if it's a bigger program, it tends to become cliquey for whatever reasons, but that's the pattern I saw. I mean, going back to how did you choose schools, for me, this was important that the class size is of the right size, but also how Oxford as a university is typically structured. There are a lot of these mechanisms that exist within the university and within side business school that sort of make you interact with people. For example, we have this concept of formal dinners. So you will go to a college for a formal dinner. Of course, it's very Hogwarts style. You'd feel like Harry Potter in the middle of nowhere. But more importantly, you would be seated with random people. Maybe you'll have a friend or two with you, but that's it. Yeah, right. You'd be seated with random people. So I've had formal dinners with people who are like, I don't know. I was once seated next to this woman who's like Rasha Saeed, whose dad is basically after whom our business school is named. And she was telling me about like what being a director at Tate Modern taught her. Or once I was seated next to this very young woman who was a PhD candidate in London, but then when I asked what she does for a living, because she mentioned some work, she was a death doula. So you would never meet people like that who are exceptional, who are very diverse, who would tell you what you don't know when you don't even know what you don't know, right? That's what Oxford does for you. So whatever you do, don't choose a cliquey school. It won't do well for you. Their LinkedIn posts, go out, search for them, where people are talking about their MBA experiences, what worked for them, what did not work for them, and that did not work for them is very important.
Okay, I really love those answers. Thank you so much. Okay, without scaring anyone, can you tell us what a typical day looked like, both inside and outside of the campus during your MBA?
I can probably go. I think it does differ by term, because I think as you go through the second Hillary and Trinity terms, I think at least I think during our year, you could it was more elective based, so you could pick which electives and you didn't have class on every day. But I think on average, a typical day is, I think it'd be interesting if you were sort of trying out one of the sports teams, because you'd have to wake up pretty early. I think they have like training really early before class. So if you were rowing, for example, your day would start pretty early. Go train. I think after that, the lucky bit about SPS, I think it's still true as well, is that there are showers, so you can sort of shower before class. I think typically class starts at about nine-ish. You end up having a couple of classes a day, with a lunch hour in between. Usually after, there are so many co-curriculars to get involved in, both within the business school and outside, that there's something going on all the time. So typically, post-class, you will end up having either a speaker series in the sort of main hall where, for example, the Monzo CEO at that time, sort of came over and spoke to us. I remember UEFA's president came over and spoke to us as well. So you can attend that kind of talk. There's either a recruitment event somewhere happening in the university or directly within the business school that you can attend a little later in the evening, where you can speak to some of the folks at the firm that are recruiting. And then, inevitably, like as the week goes on, there are social events like all the way through. So either at the Oxford Union, you can sort of go attend a talk by some, ex-government person or like a sports person there, or equally so, you could, sort of go to a social at one of the bars around the town, and more, try and fit some reading in for the classes the next day. So I think that's, I'd say, I don't know if anyone else has different perspectives. That's in a nutshell what you could pretty much spend about 12 to 15 hours doing different things and still miss out on stuff, right? But it's yours to curate again. You can equally so go back home after class and prep for something. So yeah, you're really yours to curate, but very immersive, a lot of different things and options of what you can get involved in.
Yeah, and during our time, we had classes only from Monday to Thursday. And then Friday used to be sort of the extracurriculars day, or, for group projects and all of that stuff. So that was nice. So you knew that, at least that's Friday where I could work on other stuff. So that was good to know.
I had a very I don't know, unique, I think, MBA year, because I did a lot of things. I learned how to kayak, so I did that over the weekends. And Oxford has these canals and Port Meadow, which has a big lake. So if you like nature, or you also want to use this year for some sort of like serenity, Oxford is great. So I learned how to kayak. I did rowing in the summer. It's an Oxford tradition. I didn't want to graduate without at least a taster of it. So I rowed in the summer. I tried a little bit of pole dancing. They had those classes. I worked on this carbon finance idea with the Oxford Climate Tech Incubator over the summer, which was very cool. I did debating at the Oxford Union, which was like something in my dreams that I want. If I go to Oxford, I want to do that. So they would do workshops during session time. So I did those workshops, and I mean, it was like a dream come true, because then I got to debate at the Union twice. One when our batch was ending, which I lost. But then when the new batch was starting for the next year, I was able to participate in that debate too, and that I won. So I have that on my resume actually. And yeah, so I purposely didn't mention any academic stuff, because there's enough out there. It's great. I mean, some of my favorite transformational experiences happen in these sort of classrooms with people during just case discussions. I also did a course at the Oxford School of Environment and Geography, which was around sustainability during the spring. So essentially, for me, the university was something that had so much to offer. And I would highly suggest that if you end up going to Oxford, don't just look at the school, look at the university. There's so much to do, and you would have a great time.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've got maybe two more questions left. Given the 1 year format in hindsight, do you feel there was something you would have preferred to enhance your MBA experience? Perhaps something you realised in your post-MBA role as well?
I go again. Yeah, I think I'd say, interestingly, I think my reflection is probably like before the program began, which is I actually wish I could have known that I needed to dedicate a bit more time to like the preparatory stuff. I think there's a bunch you can prepare ahead of time. So I'd say, I think my reflection probably is that I feel like I think even though the experience was great, if the question posed is that I had to enhance my experience, it would probably be just get the pre-work out the way, which I didn't quite spend too much time on. So sort of worked until the week before I moved over. So yeah, I'd say take a month or two if you can accommodate that to get all of the pre-work done, so that you don't scramble once it starts.
I'll just add that I mean, there's actually so many what you had heard from people before. There's so many things to do. You'll always leave out in a few. I I just wish I spent a little bit more time on reading all the casework that was taught in the classes, because I would read like part of it or read some, but did not read all. Like I felt like I knew so much, like from I could reference so much of the casework when I was in the job, but I could not recollect everything. And that was like that I felt like I should, if I had spent all the time to actually study all that, that would have been there in my fingertips much more easier. Not the answer you want to hear, but I mean, I did enjoy the time immensely and did everything from playing sports to going around, participating in other projects. But yeah, I mean, there's that you can never do everything. Then so you'll always leave out on something that on the table. But for me, I think if I had read a little bit more of casework, I would have been able to do my job better.
Yeah, I don't think even now that I think back about the 1-year program, I don't think I would want to change it. Just echoing what Arjun said, you'll have to prepare beforehand. Thankfully, I was able to do so. I left my job somewhere in July, and then I had most of July and August, and I really spent that time talking to the alumni, doing all the. You get a lot of. I think there were a lot of online classes, or what was it? So basically, you brush up your skills in accounting, finance, etc. before really coming onto the program. So I made sure I did that. And I spoke to a lot of alumni. I was confused among so many industries. So I also was able to speak with a lot of career coaches within Oxford before really traveling to Oxford. I did that back from India. And by the time I joined the program, I sort of knew what I wanted from the program because I'd worked before that. So I would say it's not a 1-year program, it's 1 year plus 2-3 months. That is the pre-MBA stuff that you do. I know some people who also like left their job and did a pre-MBA internship. So that really helped them decide whether they want to continue into the stream or not. Sometimes it's also good to know what you don't want to do. So a lot of people tried various things before the MBA. So in hindsight, yes, I think 1 year was perfect. If it was 2 years without any extra fees, I would definitely do it. Just staying in Oxford, why not? But I think 1 year was perfect. Yeah. And no regrets about it.
If I could add to that, I would just say, if you're joining the MBA program, they give you some courses to do over the summer. Do them, especially the account stuff, because I saw a lot of people struggle with accounts, and Oxford isn't even hardcore academic, right? Like it's just the right amount, but there are other schools like Chicago Booth, etc., which are very, very hardcore. Oxford isn't there, but still people struggle with accounts, at least in the first term. So if you are someone who's not very confident about finance, accounts, etc., whatever courses they give you in the summer, do them. Don't skimp on them. Also, I don't know when this call is going to end, probably soon. So before that happens, if anyone wants to reach out for help, I know everyone on the panel is quite accessible. I am too, so feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to help.
That's great. And before we go, I will definitely share your QR codes for LinkedIn so that everyone can scan them and it's an easy access. So I appreciate you for saying that. So we're going to end the call now, but we can go round and maybe you can share one highlight in school and one highlight outside the school. That would be great. We can start with Shruti. Is that okay?
Okay. One highlight out of school. So I think everyone in our batch was just so excited to organize treks for us, which is basically trips. So a bunch of my Japanese friends, they got together and they organized a trip to Japan for 10-12 days, and I think it was the best trip of my life. Right. It's a country that could be a very overwhelming for people, especially who don't know the language. And I'm vegetarian, which was even harder. But they did it to such detail that not only did I have the time of my life with my friends, but also the kind of respect I have for Japanese culture now, that the amount of detail they put in to make sure that each meal was vegetarian for me. And it was at some of the best places that Japan has to offer, not something that, you know, someone would make in a corner for you just so that you could survive. So that kind of respect and love that you build for your friends, that for me, that was really beautiful. One highlight during the year, I did this course called Reputation and Leadership by Professor Rupert Younger. He heads this Center for Reputation in Oxford, and the class is very selective, very small, and also he doesn't allow anyone to audit. That means you just can't sit in the class if you want, if you're not a part of it. And that course was just, I think I loved it. If you want to know more about these sort of things, just hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to share more.
Anyone can go next.
I can go next. So for me, the highlight in the classroom was global opportunities and threats. So I think now it's an optional course. That's what I've been told. But at our time, it was mandatory. And I'm so glad it was, because all of us were forced to do it. And what that SPOTER program teaches you is systemic thinking, which now that I am working in sustainability, and even if you're not, you realize that nothing is black and white, you know, and every problem is so complicated to solve. But if you're really able to, you know, draw the entire systems map, every problem is possible. So that is what it taught me. And honestly, I'd never done anything like that before. Outside of the MBA, so I was part of Green Templeton College, and I was the entertainment officer of GTC, which meant that I organized a lot of formal dinners. And because I organized a lot of formal dinners, I also got to attend a lot of formal dinners for free. So that was such a good time, you know, like going to all of these beautiful colleges, having the best food, and also got to take guests with me. And I also got to host formal dinners in Green Templeton College. So yeah, that was a really good experience.
I can go next. So within the school, I think two things come to my mind. So one was this course called Humanities and Business. It was I forget the name of the professor. The entire course was goosebumps. Like the professor would take us to museum. We'll do walks in a college. The topics were so interesting, and such basic fundamental things that you need to know when you are conducting yourself in the place of business. Like, how does non-verbal communication impact the outcomes of your conversation? How do you use ethos, logic, as well as emotion in navigating the different conversations at different places? How is the structure of architecture of the room, the placement of the seats, going to determine what kind of conversation you're going to have? Mind-blowing ideas which you'd never even thought would be a point of discussion in an MBA, and such beautifully with great engagement done by the professor. I was just amazed. Every class of his was like something I looked forward to and enjoyed it terribly. Second thing was the entrepreneurship project. We made it was a very cool team. We had a very nice idea, and generally all of us thought it could actually be something. So we were just putting together a pitch, working on story building, how to put together the data, how to make the case. It was a great team experience. Outside of class, I think the MBATs would take the highlight. I think it's a massive Olympic style tournament of multiple sports. So you ended up playing cricket. I ended up playing cricket, badminton, poker, and Counter-Strike, among all things, with different schools, which is so much fun. It was an amazing time.
Yeah, I think most of the highlights have sort of been covered, right? I think the balls, the formal dinners outside, the treks, weekend trips with folk that you never dreamt of meeting. But I'd actually sort of wind up and say I think in the school and outside, it's the people. I think the people are genuinely the highlight. You'll meet people in your college, like Vishpriya said, doing PhDs and all sorts of subjects, just sitting down with them in the core of the college, just like talking to them about why they chose to go that path. Someone in my college, for example, was doing a doctorate in migratory birds, sort of like sitting down with them, trying to understand that. Equally within the school, folks that have joined, from consulting firms, given that was sort of my eventual path that, especially when I chose that path, just sitting down around them, trying to solve problems, understanding how they thought, and how the job had helped them craft those thoughts and solutions. It's unparalleled in terms of the experience, in terms of sort of helping grow your own personal horizon. So yeah, I'll just finish with that thought.
Thank you so much. Well, that's the end of our webinar. Thank you so much to our audience and thank you for your questions, but also a huge thank you to our panel. Really appreciate your reflection and your insight to the MBA. There is their QR code in case you just want to get in touch with them. They're more than happy to help. If you have any questions in regards to the admissions, the process itself, feel free to email Oxford MBA and we will happily get back to you. For now, thank you ever so much and take care. Goodbye.